Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about a new television show, a pilot for a new Starz TV show. It is called Heels, that's the show, so this is season 1, episode 1, and it is called Kayfabe. So I will be going into spoilers from the beginning, but this is just kind of a general overview of what I thought of the opening episode. So anyone familiar with the world of wrestling, just by the show being called Heels and then the title of the first episode, Kayfabe, they'll know then this is a wrestling show, a wrestling based show. And the setup is that Stephen Amell plays Jack Spade, who is a local promoter and wrestler in a like indie promotion. I think it's meant to be set in Florida or somewhere around that area, and he had the promotion left to him by his late father. His brother also wrestles in the promotion. His ring name is Ace, and at the start of this first episode we get a setup for a feud between the two of them, and like an in-ring feud, which is set to be the main event for the next week's show. Amal as Jack is like the defending champion, and then his brother Ace is seen as like the big up and comer, starting to get a lot of like crowd support, is very much a fan favourite. So there's a push for him to like win the title in the match. We also get a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, because we see that Jack is also the booker, and we see him like coming up with like the scripts for the matches during the days, and he's sort of faced with a dilemma whether to put himself over or to go with the popular choice and give the belt to his brother Ace. And during the episode there's certain factors that play into this. There's the fact that Ace is being scouted by a rival promotion, a much bigger like promotion. This very sort of colourful, charismatic promoter comes in at one point who knows like the family and knew the father from way back, and he tries to turn Ace's head, and we sort of see little hints of Ace starting to get a little bit too cocky, a little bit too big for his boots, and he does fancy him bettering himself and moving on. He's sort of starting to enjoy the stardom. And we also look at Jack's private life as well, his social life with his family, and we see how he's maybe getting a bit too invested in the whole wrestling business and starting to neglect his family and his social life. And it's almost, I mean, in a way, some of this, they're definitely drawing parallels between real life. I almost thought Jack was very much like a Bret Hart type figure for like wrestling fans, not necessarily in how he looked or the style, but just in how seriously he took the whole thing and how sort of old school he was. Maybe Ace a bit more like a Shawn Michaels type, but in any case, that's the drama of the first episode. And just to sum things up, I thought it was okay. I thought it was solid. They were doing some quite interesting things. They were obviously playing with like the heel dichotomy in some ways, because of how serious Jack took himself at times, and at certain times, because he was obviously the promoter and there was tension between him and his brother. I think there was this idea that ultimately he was almost making a decision for his own sort of interest, like maybe he was getting a bit jealous of the brother. So it's playing with interesting ideas. I think part of the problem is that it feels like a very niche sort of thing, where maybe only wrestling fans will really get a hold of what's going on. Obviously, it makes it clear in the script what's going on, but at the same time, I think a lot of non-wrestling fans would leave them sort of scratch their heads in a way, and it's like, just can't get into it. Not so much they don't know what's going on, but a lot of the references may go over their heads, or they may just not be that interested in it because they're not into wrestling. Whereas I think something like Glow does have that broader appeal. I think there's a lot of stuff that can sort of hook you into the drama of Glow, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, which I think is part of the beauty of it. I think this feels kind of a bit cliched and a little bit clunky. I think just the representation of like a small town and its local wrestling promotion just felt a bit sort of like been there, done that, and I think what this could have used was a little bit more style. It was almost like too gritty and downbeat, and it was almost for the sake of it. In many ways, it did feel like authentic. It felt like, yeah, this is a real like independent promotion. And there's some enjoyable stuff with like the backstage politics, and when you see the guys sort of training and practicing their moves, like there's quite a funny moment where one of them like blows an elbow drop, and you actually have this character of Crystal, who is the valet for Ace, who's trying to get a foot on the ladder, trying to actually work her way up to be a wrestler herself, and she actually puts the guy right and says, this is how you do an elbow drop properly. So there's that sort of plot as well, and you've got Ace having like seeing Crystal as well. That's like a romantic type thing. But I think, yeah, it does take itself a bit too seriously. I think it could have done with a little bit more style to elevate it. I'm also not too convinced about how true to life this is, or how relevant this feels anymore. It does feel like a very old-fashioned story. You've got also the religious angle, because they're like a religious family, and they kind of go to church. Like Jack's wife is like a singer in like the local church group, and you've just got stuff like that with him neglecting his responsibilities, but him almost wanting to run like a wholesome type promotion. So at the start, when Ace swears and he basically goes off script, Jack gives him like a tongue lashing in the backstage when they go back, and says, you know, don't go off script again. There's kids out there. So there's that tension where he sort of wants to run a family show, and there's just question marks over, is this realistic anymore? Is this moving with the times? Because at one point they're talking about like hardcore promotions and how they're sort of taking off and becoming popular. And I wonder again what sort of time like period this is supposed to be, because you don't necessarily think of hardcore promotions as being that relevant at the moment. I mean, maybe they're making a comeback just because we do live in this sort of niche sort of era, but just stuff like that. And when you see like the flamboyant sort of talent scout who comes after Ace, and it played by a really good actor. It's the actor who's been in The Deuce and The Sopranos, a bunch of other things, but he just looks like a Michael P.S.A.'s type, really, and just the look of him looks very sort of outdated, and it does sort of date this. I do think a lot of this feels very cliched, not just in a wrestling context. I mean, maybe for a wrestling drama, like an actual drama on screen, it maybe is quite new, but it just felt cliched in any case of a lot of shows you tend to see, a lot of films you tend to see. And I think that is sort of holding it back. In a way, because of that, I didn't really find the characters that interesting or engaging, although I did appreciate what the drama was doing and some of its idea. I think it could have done with a bit more style, a bit more of a lighter touch. I think Stephen Amell is very good. I think he's very convincing. He's almost playing against type because usually he does play quite sort of attractive, or almost sort of like shallow type characters, but with a sort of a comic type edge. He actually plays it very straight here. He is the serious one, and he does transform himself. He looks very different, and he's very grounded. And I think they're almost playing with that dynamic of, like, is he the real heel in the end? Another thing I wasn't so keen on is that they do end with, like, a screw style job, with him going into business for himself. So when it comes to the big match, he's been, like, unsure and like not making it clear exactly what the finish will be, and he rejects like suggestions and stuff, but he then goes into business for himself. He does like a real sort of hold on his brother, and nearly breaks his arm, and Ace sort of screams in pain, and then Ace like whacks him one for real afterwards. But it's sort of, the match has ended by stoppage because the ref's hand is forced. But once Ace has like whacked his brother properly, the crowd then turn on Ace. So it's going for that sort of thing. But just them using the screw job, like referencing the Montreal screw job, I just thought, yeah, come on. It's time to move on from this stuff. This was very cliched. And obviously, if you're not a wrestling fan, you may not know about the screw job. Some people will, but a lot of people who aren't wrestling fans may not. So, again, that might be a bit of a problem. They're not really sure what's being referenced there. But I think it just being cliched and the characters not being that engaging, I think, is the main problem. One thing they could have done, which may have made it a bit more interesting, is you obviously see the wives at one point, and one of them, who's quite an decent sort of guy, who's like sort of close with the brother, close with Ace, and we see him at one point. He's very concerned about the way Ace is going, because there's a really nasty scene actually in like a convenience store where Ace is basically trying to steal something, and the girl sort of catches him and calls him out, but then Ace just is like really mean to her. He brings up like this story from when they were younger, and it's just really crude to her, really sort of nasty and upsetting. But the other guy, the one who's with him, who's also a wrestler, like, he's about to get married, and his wife is like concerned about him and what's going to happen to him, and sort of just the danger of being in the ring and stuff. And we get like the commentary on keeping kayfabe, not exposing the business even outside of the ring. But I think it actually could be a more interesting series if they focus more on the wife and the wives and the people around them. I actually think that could be like a fresh angle for them to do it. Obviously still focus on the wrestling and the stuff, but I actually think that could be a different way to do it. But in any case, overall, I would say it's a decent episode. I'm not sure I'm that into what's going on, but I will check out more because there's enough here for me to check out another episode. But I'm not sure I can quite recommend it, but probably worth a look is what I would say. So I will come back next week for episode 2, see how I feel about it. But let me know your thoughts on heels in the comments below. What did you think of this first episode? Like and subscribe, share me out on social media, and ding that bell on YouTube. I'll be back with more soon. Goodbye.